What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about Francis Maxwell. For those of you who don't know, Francis Maxwell is the sports and fashion contributor over at the Young Turks. So it stands to reason that the sports and fashion contributor would make videos about race issues in America. Makes sense. Now, a lot of you have been asking me to make a video response to one of Francis Maxwell's videos, but honestly, up until now, I've had no real interest in doing so. That was, of course, true until somebody retweeted a 3-minute gem of a video starring Francis Maxwell where he literally gets facts wrong in every single case that he presented.
Alright, let's start by giving you two examples of murder. And I want you to guess which perpetrator was tried as an adult. I know you may already have an idea where I'm going with this, seeing as I'm constantly referred to as a white-hating cuck in my pursuit for justice. White-hating cuck.
You said it, not me, dude. I like how he started the video like that.
Anyway, behind door number one is Cyntoia Brown, a child trafficking victim who shot and killed a sex predator in self-defense after he paid to have sex with her. A minor at the time.
1988, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That makes you, what, 15 now?
16.
16.
And behind door number two, we have Nicholas Giampa, a proud neo-Nazi who gleefully spread his message of ethnic cleansing across the internet and to those close to him. And when his girlfriend's parents responded by doing what most reasonable non-Nazis would do, telling Giampa, hey, you've got issues and we want nothing to do with you. So then he shot and murdered them.
So basically what Francis is doing here is he's taking two homicide cases, one involving a 16-year-old black girl and one involving a 17-year-old white boy, and he's comparing them in order to demonstrate an unjust criminal justice system based on the idea that the 16-year-old black girl was tried as an adult while this 17-year-old white kid will be tried as a minor. And according to Francis, Cyntoia Brown acted in self-defense while this white kid was an evil neo-Nazi who was a horrific person and deserves the worst possible punishment. Well, there are more than a few things wrong with the way that Francis decided to present these two cases. Number one, the Cyntoia Brown case was not a self-defense case. It was an armed robbery. The way Francis presents this case, you would think that her pimp put her in the car with the John, and then the John attacked her, and then she fought back, managed to get the John's gun, and then shot and killed him, and then ran away.
Is it the 16-year-old victim of predatory behaviour, or the 17-year-old self-professed admirer of Adolf Hitler, who happens to be white? I mean, he was just a kid ritually following alt-right brainwashing sites, preaching ethnic cleansing, talking about using Jews as target practice. Let's give him the Brock Turner treatment, shall we? He doesn't deserve to have the book thrown at him like a Kershaw fastball like Cyntoia over here, who took action against one of the men who had sexually assaulted her.
He choked me and I passed out because he said I thought he was a joke. In between my legs, like, he just grabbed it real hard.
Oh no, she was fully cognizant of her actions, so she must be tried as an adult.
However, that's not what happened. Cyntoia Brown was an underage prostitute. She got in the car with the John, presumably under the premise that they were going to have a date. They had the date, and while he was sleeping, she shot him in the back of the head, according to the forensic evidence. Weird how she needed to defend herself from a dude that was unconscious. See, I don't know about you guys, but to me, it seems to be a little bit of a red flag in your self-defense story when you take all of the valuables of your presumed attacker after you shoot and kill him. Also, another little bit of a red flag, she had her own gun prior to the date. It was almost as if this was an armed robbery turned homicide, and although she used self-defense in her court case, she ended up being found guilty of that armed robbery and homicide beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of her peers. Problem number two in this comparison is that the case of the white kid took place in Virginia, while the Cyntoia Brown case took place in Tennessee. And as we've discussed at length in my other videos breaking down cases, the jurisdiction where the crime takes place has a huge impact on charges, conviction, and sentence, because different jurisdictions have different laws. And the other glaring weakness that makes this not a one-to-one comparison is that these cases took place 13 years apart. Cyntoia Brown was charged in 2004, and this other case with the white nationalist happened in 2017. Time period makes a huge difference in what laws are on the books. In fact, from the early 1990s up until a 2012 Supreme Court decision barring it, the number of kids that got life without parole exploded in the country. And this is an era of criminal justice that I would like to dub the holy shit, those are children and those sentences are absolutely insane era. doesn't really have a nice ring to it. Now, it'd be one thing for me to just say that there was an explosion in the number of children tried as adults and given harsh sentences, but since I'm not Francis Maxwell, I'm actually going to show you comparable cases to the Cyntoia Brown case and give you the results. Jacob Inn, Colorado, 1990s. At 15 years old, he and a fellow classmate conspired to kill both of his parents because he was being sexually abused by his stepfather and emotionally abused by his mother. Now, just like in the Cyntoia Brown case, the defense argued self-defense due to the long history of abuse that the child faced. Both children in this case were giving life sentences without the possibility of parole. And by the way, Cyntoia Brown also got life, but she has the possibility of parole. Next up on the list, we have Paul Henry Gingrich, Indiana, 12 years old. Gingrich and his 15-year-old accomplice were tried as adults and they were facing life sentences without the possibility of parole. However, fortunately for them, they pled down to conspiracy to murder and were only sentenced to 25 years. That's right, a 12-year-old kid in Indiana was tried as an adult and sentenced to more than double the amount of years that he had been on the planet Earth. There's also the case of Jordan Brown, who when he was 11 years old shot and killed his pregnant stepmother. The state of Pennsylvania went to charge Jordan Brown as an adult even though he committed the crime at 11 years old, and after a hefty legal battle with the defense team, they decided to charge him as a juvenile, but he was still sentenced to 10 years. Somebody who was 11 years old when the crime was committed was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And he's considered the lucky one because the state of Pennsylvania was particularly bad about trying young kids as adults and giving them lengthy prison sentences. Now look, these are just a few examples. I'm going to link the PBS documentary When Kids Get Life so you can learn a little bit more about this issue. But this era was packed with really harsh sentences for really young offenders. And if you couldn't tell by the examples that I used in this video, these kids were all younger than Cyntoia Brown, they were white, and some of them got harsher sentences than her. In fact, it got so bad that in 2012, the Supreme Court ruled that you can't give kids life without parole. They decided that it was an 8th Amendment violation, that it was cruel and unusual punishment. And I 100% agree. In fact, I've always been against trying minors as adults. And I think it's the height of immorality to say that we can't rehabilitate a child, that essentially their life is over and that we're gonna throw them away in society. I think that's disgusting, it's repulsive. And if the underlying premise of Francis's video was that this should not happen to children, I would be totally on board with that. But it's not. Instead, Francis decided that it was more important to sow the seeds of racial division rather than talk about an actual criminal justice issue. Oh, and lie about the case. Next up, we have some idiotic comparisons on the part of Francis.
And you know how after any attack by a Muslim or a problem in the black community, you'll hear conservative mouthpieces talk about how the Muslim community needs to do more to weed out radicals, or how the black community needs to strengthen their values.
Any black person, there are still going to be problems in black communities. We need to address that as well.
But what about the white community here?
Wait, what?
But what about the white community here?
Francis just asked why we never ask white people to step up and fight bad actors that are white, when this case, even according to Francis, is about parents who were murdered for doing exactly that.
But what about the white community here, who gleefully spread his message of ethnic cleansing across the internet and to those close to him? And when his girlfriend's parents responded by doing what most reasonable non-Nazis would do, telling Giampa, hey, you've got issues and we want nothing to do with you. So then he shot and murdered them in cold blood.
He's literally asking, why aren't you stepping up in a case about a family who stepped up and got killed because they stepped up? Also, if you needed more proof that the goal of this video was to promote racial division, just look at the way that Francis inflates this Virginia story. This neo-Nazi kid didn't kill his girlfriend's parents because they were converting to Judaism. He killed them because they didn't want her seeing him. This wasn't an ideological killing. This was a revenge killing due to a breakup. Francis gives examples about what if the kid is black or what if the kid is Islamic. But how about what if the kid was communist? And the parents of his girlfriend didn't like commies, so they told her to break up with him. And then he got angry and killed the parents and then tried to kill himself because they told the daughter not to date him anymore. Nobody would say that that murder is connected to communism because it wasn't an ideologically motivated murder. This guy was a neo-Nazi. He killed his white girlfriend's white parents because they didn't want their daughter dating a neo-Nazi.
Not only is this neo-Nazi being tried as a minor if he survives his self-inflicted gunshot wound, but all over the media he's been described as a troubled teen or a misguided kid.
The teenage boy is now charged with their murder.
The gunman was a neo-Nazi-inspired teenager.
You remember Michael Brown? Yeah, he was 18 when he was shot and killed, but we never heard the media describe him as a child.
Oh, Michael Brown mentioned! So people got mad at me the last time I went over the Michael Brown case because they say the left doesn't mention Michael Brown anymore. But here it is in 2018, another mention of Michael Brown. And did you get the context of him mentioning Michael Brown? He's like, nobody said Michael Brown was a child when he was 18.
Do you remember Michael Brown? Yeah, he was 18 when he was shot and killed, but we never heard the media describe him as a child.
Yeah, because 18 is a legal adult. Like, Francis, what are you doing? Why did you choose Michael Brown, who was a legal adult, and not Tamir Rice, who was actually a 12-year-old kid? That's so deceptive. Also, once again, there is an 86-page Department of Justice report on the Michael Brown case. And according to the forensic evidence, the majority of the witnesses, the Obama administration, and the local investigation, Officer Darren Wilson's account of events was true. The account of events promoted by the media and people like Francis Maxwell is complete and utter bullshit. Once again, I will link the full Justice Department report in the description box so you can check it out. But anyway, back to the original premise. This white teenager who is legally underage was referred to as a child, when no black teenagers are ever referred to as children. Francis, did you forget the 4 African-American legal adults who kidnapped and tortured a disabled white person because he was white? Like, you know, in that case, the police chief referred to all of these legal adults who are African-American as children, right?
You know, although they are adults, they're 18. Kids make stupid decisions. I shouldn't call them kids, they're legally adults, but they're young adults and they make stupid decisions.
You know, the thing that you say never happens when it totally happened in this case, and this case was a racially motivated hate crime, and they were still referred to as children. Weird how you decided to cherry pick the Michael Brown case, but you're such a hack, you didn't realize that being 18 actually makes you a legal adult in the United States. Pathetic. By the way, this may not seem relevant now, but one of these 4 kidnappers was actually convicted and sentenced, and she got 4 years probation and 200 hours of community service.
It's all about perception, and a preconceived perception that has been wired into the mindset of Americans so that when they see a white face, they automatically look for excuses to justify criminal behavior. Hence why Brock Turner is considered a kid who just tripped and fell and raped a girl, whereas
Brock Turner is a kid who just tripped and fell and raped a girl? Ridiculous. First of all, everyone across the country hates Brock Turner. Second, this goes again in the category of misrepresentations because Brock Turner, contrary to popular belief, was not convicted of rape. He was initially charged with rape, but the charges were reduced because in the state of California, rape is considered forcible penetration with the male genitalia. Turner only got as far as the fingers when he was busted, and in California, forcible penetration by objects or fingers is a much lower charge. So because Turner was a first-time offender and he pled down from a much lower charge than rape, he got 6 months in jail. He also got a lengthy probation. I think it was like 10 years. Light sentences are super common for first-time offenders. That's why the woman that I just brought up, who was involved in the racially motivated kidnapping and torture of a mentally disabled person, was given a lighter sentence than even Brock Turner. Now, by the way, I actually 100% agree with the feminist position on the California law. To me, the idea that forcible penetration with a foreign object or the fingers isn't deserving of an equivalent sentence to forcible penetration with the penis is absolutely ridiculous. No sexual assault victim has ever said, "I'm glad he forcibly penetrated me with an object or his fingers and not his penis," because that would have been really traumatic. To me, California should either change that law to make it all rape, or at least all with equivalent sentencing. But Francis doesn't bring that up. Instead, he tries to compare Brock Turner to Meek Mill.
hence why Brock Turner is considered a kid who just tripped and fell and raped a girl, whereas Meek Mill is a thug that has to be sentenced to years in jail for doing wheelies while on probation.
Now, the premise of Francis comparing Meek Mill to Brock Turner is the idea that Meek Mill was given no chance while Brock Turner was given the benefit of the doubt. And this premise is completely absurd on his face. Meek Mill was not put in jail for 2 to 4 years for popping wheelies on his motorbike. Meek Mill has been violating his probation for the past 8 years. In 2009, he was arrested on a felony weapons charge and felony drug possession. And because he's Meek Mill, he was sentenced to probation. Now, a part of being on probation is following the terms of your probation, which should be pretty easy for a celebrity. So, of course, Meek Mill violated his probation over and over and over again, and never faced any repercussions for it. These violations included, and are not limited to, failing a drug test, failing to abide by the travel restrictions of his probation, failure to check in with his probation officer, 2 separate arrests while on probation. Every single time for 8 years when Meek Mill violated his parole, he was cut a break. However, prior to this last probation violation, the judge asked Meek Mill to not do anything for the next 6 months. But Mills couldn't even stay out of trouble in that tiny 6-month window, so the judge finally, after giving him numerous chances, got fed up and violated his probation. I mean, seriously, if you're going to pick a case to show that black men don't get a chance in the criminal justice system, maybe don't pick a case where this person got 8 years worth of chances. Any normal non-celebrity on probation would have had their probation violated in the first or the second incident, not 8 years down the line after begging the dude to stop, and then he still ignored them. The idea that Meek Mill is going to prison is an example of racism is ridiculous, and I'm sure a lot of people who find themselves on probation would sign up for the Meek Mill's deal in a heartbeat. Francis, at the beginning of this video, you talked about how you get criticized and hate for pursuing justice.
Seeing as I'm constantly referred to as a white-hating cuck in my pursuit for justice,
that is not why you're getting criticized. I have not personally attacked you once throughout the course of the video, but what I have shown is that you don't know what you're talking about. Either you don't fact check because you really just don't care about criminal justice issues that much, or you read regressive rags and you literally put them in your teleprompter and make your basic low-level Facebook content off of that. Seriously, he cited a BET article about Meek Mills where the article basically argued that he shouldn't be held accountable because he grew up poor. So we should ignore all of his probation violations that have occurred now that he's rich and famous because he grew up impoverished. That's the article that's cited in the video Francis used. The reality is that there are real policy issues in the criminal justice system. I have pointed out just a few of those issues in this video. You have pointed out none. What you have done is misrepresent every single case presented in your video in order to promote racial division. And spoiler alert, that's why people don't like you. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Support me on Patreon like Mike Barbosa, Louis Cool Dance, Pepe Loves Trump, and Michael. This has been a complete breakdown of a Francis Maxwell video. Till next time.